Hey guys, and welcome back to Beyond the Void Horror Podcast. My name is Alex, and today we have writer, producer, director, makeup effects guy, Stephen Kostanski with us today to talk about his new movie, Psycho Goreman, also known as PG. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you, Alex.
Appreciate it, man. I appreciate you spending the time. I've been waiting since The Void for some Voidception.
Yeah, I like the name of your podcast. I feel like that's a good sequel title.
Yes, right. There you go. That's true. Yeah, because what's beyond the void, right? Obviously, you got your new movie coming out. It's been a pretty big success for you. And, a lot of people are talking about it, of course. And you got the new Blu-ray coming out in like 2 different regions, right?
I feel it's coming out in a bunch of regions.
Probably. Oh, that's right. Yeah, you got Germany.
It's like it came out in Germany. I feel like Australia's at some point. Yeah, I honestly don't know. I can't keep track of all this stuff. I know Canada and the US at the very least are March 16th.
March 16th,
Right?
yes. So I heard that part of the inspiration for this movie was directly associated with Rawhead Rex and E.T. Can you kind of explain that for us, just for the listeners? And did it ever dawn on you to add the scene with the priest getting pissed on for the movie?
I mean, I feel like I piss on religion in a different way in this movie. But I mean, the Rawhead Rex thing is really just, I just happened to be like watching that movie at the time. I'd had ideas for this movie floating around in my head, like PG sitting at a drum set was like an image I had that I didn't know what to do with. I love the idea of just like a monster being transplanted into a very mundane kind of situation. So him like sitting in a garage band setting was really funny to me, but I didn't know like what the story around that would be. And so I was watching Rawhead Rex and I was getting bored and just thinking about like, like the core concept, which is a concept that comes from a lot of movies, is just like an ancient evil is resurrected.
Right.
And the typical horror movie like scenario is monsters resurrected and then people get chased around and killed. And that's your 90 minutes. And I was not feeling that and was like, I want to do something else with that. Like where can you take that story that's more interesting? And then I was like, well, ET, it's kind of like a similar setup to something like ET. It's just in a family movie setting. So that's when I decided to like mash the two together and was like, well, what if you had the most terrible evil being in the universe that's going on adventures with little kids? Like, what would come out of that? And so once my brain like kind of locked those two concepts together, the movie really just wrote itself. It just became a no-brainer at that point because it was like, well, of course, like all this insanity is going to explode from it. And so yeah, that was like the origins of the PG premise, and that was my excuse to cram a monster man sitting at a drum set into a movie.
Right. And it's a double entendre too, because I think I saw a review where somebody was like, this is not a PG movie. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely misleading. Yeah, but I mean, none of the promotional artwork for the movie just calls it PG. It's always called Psycho Goreman. So if you're gonna get a movie called Psycho Goreman and expect it to be a family adventure movie, that's like not hard R in a lot of ways. Like it's kind of your own fault. So I mean, too bad for those people. They made a mistake.
Well, one of the characters in the movie that I really love, and he's always great in everything he does, is Adam Brooks' character, the dad, Greg. And they have this back and forth with mom, this like continuing battle of their marriage. And I was curious as to why you added that in there.
I like, as I was coming up with the premise of this movie, one thing I didn't want to have was a lot of just like kind of stock human characters. Like watching movies like Suburban Commando and stuff, like I feel like the family dynamic is always pretty limp. And as a kid watching those movies, I was never like invested in what they were doing. It was always like, get to the He-Man stuff. I don't care about like whatever, like Courtney Cox and her boyfriend, like kind of crap they're dealing with. Like I want the fantasy stuff. So I wanted to like give the family a dimension of absurdity that made them as entertaining as PG. Like I like the idea that even though PG brings all the sci-fi fantasy craziness, he's still technically the straight man in the situation. Like the whole like fish out of water, like monster man causing craziness, like it's only like a small part of the movie. I feel like the rest of it is just him being frustrated putting up with all the family's shit that they're going through. And so that just seemed like a more interesting dynamic to me than just having like innocent, mundane family kind of navigating this monster man. I like the idea that PG is walking into an already crazy situation where, you know, obviously Mimi and Luke have their drama they're dealing with, and Greg and Susan have their drama that they're dealing with. And PG's just coming into like a huge problem scenario and that he has to navigate. So that just seemed infinitely more interesting to me than just having everyone be like the innocent side characters that they typically are in these types.
Some sort of flaw.
Crazy. Yeah, like everybody's crazy in their own way in this movie,
right?
Which is more fun to me.
One of the things that I first thought about when I heard about this movie being made was I thought of I think it was ABCs of Death 2 short, Champions of Zorb, or just Zorb.
Yeah, W's for Wish is technically what we had to call it.
Is that what it was? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we were W in the alphabet for that movie. But yeah, Champions of Zorb is the name of the like action figure line.
The He-Man sort of.
Yeah, and that very much was like kind of an early version of what this movie is. And that was where I first got my taste for like, oh, I like the idea of pairing kids with really perilous situations. And I also feel like kids bring a different dynamic to these types of stories. Like I think kids in horror movies are always great. Like it just feels more serious when there's kids around. Like it's one of the things that I love about Friday the 13th Part 6 is like there's actually kids at the camp.
Yeah.
And it just immediately makes the situation feel more serious because you're like, oh, Jason's gonna like murder a bunch of little kids. And so I wanted that kind of energy in PG, and Champions of Zorb, W's for Wish, like was definitely like a proto version of that.
Perfect.
Where that was when I realized like, oh, it's like there's a special kind of energy that comes out when you're putting kids in peril in this way. Like the situation feels more serious than if it was just adults.
Right, 100%. I agree. Yeah,
fighting these things. So yeah, that was something I wanted to carry over into PG.
Yeah, it felt very familiar in that sense, which I love that one because it's so brutal. And then there's BioCop too, which, you know, it seems like there's like this Kostanski universe like building in Psycho Goreman.
Yeah, the Kostanski cinematic universe that I'm slowly starting to set up. I mean, who knows? Like maybe Manborg will show up. In a PG. Anything is possible. But yeah, I wanted to throw BioCop into PG as a way to satisfy the constant demand I've been getting for more BioCop stuff. Because, and to be fair, I love that character too. It's more just like in terms of like time and what I'm doing. Like it's a lot to kind of pull together another BioCop short or make a BioCop movie. But I figure throwing him into PG randomly is like a fun, satisfying way to get more BioCop adventures and kind of give like a weird origin story to that character.
Sure, well. Yeah. And it seems like you have a lot of for BioCop. The character it's got to be tough to write an entire freaking movie that would be about BioCop, you know?
Well, that's the thing I'm trying to like convey to people is that like he's a good side character, but if you made a full movie about him, like it'd start to feel like an SNL original movie, like from the 90s, where you're like, did we need a ladies' man? Maybe? I don't know. Yeah. You know, so like I think keeping him just orbiting around other characters is really funny to me, and just kind of having him off to the side. So I don't know if he's ever going to get his own movie, but I'm going to keep him around for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you've been working in makeup effects and everything like that for a very long time, and obviously directing has become sort of to the forefront of what you've been doing a lot, even though you still do this stuff behind the scenes, I'm sure. Do you think that I mean, well, let's ask you this. I mean, did you do any of the makeup in this? It looked like you hadn't, so that's why I question. And did you just want to focus on directing this time?
For Psycho Goreman? Oh no, I did
Yes.
a lot of stuff on this. Like I got my hands dirty in pretty much every character in some way. But I mean, I did have a huge team contribute to the project, like Masters Effects Toronto helped a lot with the build, but it was a situation where we only had a small amount of money to do it, and it was a huge build. So a lot of it ended up being me going back to like my Manborg sensibilities of like just doing it on my own on the cheap, like making stuff the like quickest, easiest way possible. A lot of fabrication, a lot of trips to the dollar store to buy cheap materials. Um, because yeah, it was a very ambitious film, which is funny considering when I wrote it, I was like, oh, this feels like a small, achievable movie, and it really is not. It is a giant movie. But yeah, I had to get in there and build a lot of the stuff. Thankfully, I had an intern helping me out, but then I also had one of the producers, Jesse, jump in, and he basically became an effects artist like on the movie because I he offered to help out in the shop, and I was like, all right, like you're not gonna like it, but you can come help make molds and things. And he just got so into it. He was like, by the end of it, he was like building miniatures and stuff. He actually made Biocop's like melted handgun. Like that was all him.
Nice.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a very like DIY approach to making everything on this movie, and very much a team effort. But there definitely were days where it was just me alone, late at night on on a Saturday, trying to cobble stuff together because we couldn't afford to pay anyone else to do it. So yeah, I definitely got my hands dirty on this one.
Okay. Well, and now I'm curious with the gun hand, was that his way of like kind of homaging Videodrome or just something that came out of pure?
It's definitely a bit of a Videodrome thing. I do love the design of that handgun in Videodrome. It was just like a weird detail I wanted to add to Biocop, and I just like and we came up with it on set too. Just the idea of the gun like going off randomly made us laugh. So we wanted to put that in there too. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of Videodrome there. I feel there's lots of like Cronenberg type things going on in this movie as well.
I would imagine with being an effects makeup artist, there's got to be some inspiration there because he's so good at that. Like,
Oh yeah, it's hard to move past some of your influences sometimes. I mean, that kind of stuff is just so burned into my DNA at this point that like I don't even think about it when I'm writing. It just happens, and then I look back on it and go like, huh, I guess that was from that other movie, and I just didn't even realize it. So yeah, lots of homages in this one.
what would you say is one of the best? You shouldn't watch this as a kid movies that you saw as a kid that might have inspired this.
There's a few. Terminator 2 was a big one, and I think
Okay.
it's like one of my earliest memories of a movie that I had watched as a kid. Um, because yeah, it's like everything I wanted as a kid in a movie. Like that, the concept of the movie is such a like wish fulfillment for a kid concept of like now you have your own killer robot man. Like it's so cool, but it's so violent and like very adult, dealing with very adult themes. So that really like messed me up as a kid. And definitely like the traumas of that movie I've carried with me my whole life. But I'd also say RoboCop was a big influence too, especially what's the character? Emil? Is he the one that melts? He
Yeah.
gets the toxic waste on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that the
So
Biocop
like
influence right there?
yeah, like I feel like well, I think BioCop originally, to go back to when I first did that short, I think there were like two major influences on that character. One of them was the melting man from RoboCop. And the other one was in The Fly 2 when the security guard gets sprayed in the face and he like pulls his face off and he's screaming. Uh, that image was definitely something I was looking at when I was coming up with BioCop. And was like, imagine if that guy had to solve crimes. That would be fun.
That's awesome. So
So
let
yeah,
me,
if I had to pick movies, I'd say Terminator 2 and RoboCop are like huge influences
now that
from
you
when I was
say
a kid.
that, the Terminator 2 thing with the kid you're right. It's like a kid's movie. Like that's like totally adult. It really is. Like I never thought
Yeah,
of it
like
that
because
way.
yeah, the setup of it, like you could transplant that into like a PG rated or G rated Disney movie, and it would still work. The idea basically of like a kid getting like a fantasy character as their buddy, as their sidekick, and going on adventures. It's like a very transferable concept, and it just happened to come out of this like hard R-rated sci-fi action movie.
Well, let me ask you one last question. I'll let you go. I know you have busy schedule today. So what's next? Now, obviously, you've said that everything about you is pretty much just you like to make jokes, and that's just you. And this movie is the epitome of it. Are you going to try to do something more serious next time? Are you going to try to do something maybe more comedic again? Are you going to do a sequel to this? Do you even want a sequel?
I mean, there's definitely a lot of interest in more PG adventures, and I'm all over doing it. Like, it's such a big universe, I could go anywhere with it, and I could make a more serious movie and it would still fit, or I could make a wackier movie. Like, I could always make a straight up kids movie and it would still fit the universe. I'm just trying to figure out like what the smartest move is. I don't want to jump into something, and what I actually said in the last interview was I don't want to Highlander 2 myself and make something that totally shits the bed. As much as I love Highlander 2. So yeah, I'm gonna take my time and figure out what's next for PG. I mean, I'm all about doing like anything that makes my filmography stranger. I'm all about. I would love to go back and do something more serious, and just kind of explore other options for types of movies. I don't want to just get stuck doing one kind of thing. So I'm still figuring it out. There's a lot of options on the table right now. But yeah, right now I'm just working in the shop, making effects like I usually do, and I'm gonna focus on that for a little bit, let my brain clear out, and then I'll figure out what the next step is.
Awesome. Well, it's good to hear, man. Well, I really appreciate your time here, and thank you for coming on to spend some time with us. Guys, if you're looking for the new Blu-ray of Psycho Goreman, which if you haven't seen, you should, get a copy out now. It'll be out March 16th. Anywhere you want, Germany, wherever. Buy all of them, really. So
The more PG, the better.
yeah, exactly. So thank you, Steven. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.